When you hear the word finance, what's the first thought that crosses your mind? If you're like 99% of people or entrepreneurs, the thought of having to look at or deal with your numbers brings fear or dread. Let's be honest, finance has never been a sexy topic. Most hate having to deal with or even talk about their numbers or finances because they're often viewed as scary, confusing, confronting, or just plain boring as batshit. Here's the thing. Finance doesn't have to be overwhelming or intimidating, and it can actually be quite a fun and stimulating topic because making money, becoming more successful, and creating more wealth is vital if you want to build a thriving and sustainable business and/or provide a strong financial foundation for your family. I created Financial Foreplay back in 2009 as a way to demystify finance, and I've been using my proprietary methodologies and strategies based on science to make complex financial concepts accessible to everyone. I want to give you the knowledge you need in order to become even more successful at growing your business or building real wealth for your family. And I'm also going to introduce you to some global experts so that you can learn from the best. And we're going to be speaking with some trailblazing individuals and entrepreneurs so you can really benefit from their stories, challenges, and triumphs. Financial Foreplay is a registered trademark, which is why there is only one Financial Foreplay, and you should only ever strive and settle for the best. It's time to slip into something a little bit more comfortable, because we're about to dive in and begin.
Can you keep my secret?
If you're like most small business owners that I work with, you probably went into business because you're good at what you do. Graphic design, hospitality, construction, farming, retail, what have you. You may be one of the 95% of small business owners, though, who discover that although you work like a dog every single day, you have little to show for it. You may be one of those who are right now feeling isolated because you don't feel like there's anyone you can discuss this stuff with or share your greatest fears and challenges with. Which leads me to one area that I'm guessing is definitely harder to grasp than you probably thought it was going to be: the management of your money. If you're like most, you probably never dreamed that the ability to understand how money works would be very important. You thought, hey, that's for my accountant or my bookkeeper to worry about. Sure, the accountant shows me a few reports probably from time to time, but I don't see the need to really understand what they mean. If there was a problem, he or she would tell me, wouldn't they? Well, you probably don't realize that all those numbers, the financial DNA of your business, can tell you a hell of a lot more than you thought. They can tell you why you're suddenly struggling to pay the bills. They can reveal why you have to forego your salary again this month because there just isn't enough cash to pay you. The financial numbers are the story of your business. The numbers don't lie. You just need to learn how to listen to them and use them to your advantage, which is why today we're going to practice a little bit of financial foreplay. And I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Terrell Turner. He's an experienced certified public accountant, CPA, in America. He's a finance leader. He's a podcast host, a speaker, and he's the founder of T.L. Turner Consulting Firm, which is primarily focused on making accounting and finance a little less complicated for business owners and business leaders, which I think is a wonderful endeavor. You may have already listened to his highly rated podcast called Business Talk Library. And if you haven't, you need to get onto it right now because I highly recommend it. He holds a bachelor degree from Lander University and a master's in accounting from the University of Notre Dame. After years of studying hard, he launched his career in public accounting with one of the big four international accounting firms, Ernst & Young, followed by multiple finance leadership roles throughout the U.S. and Brazil with Fortune 500 companies like Navistar and General Electric. In addition to all of this amazing stuff, the consulting, podcasts, the speaking engagements, he also enjoys spending time with his wife, Lola Turner, and traveling to enjoy his experiences. I just want to say welcome to this show. I'm so excited to hear your amazing insights.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and thank you so much for the invite.
Let's get stuck into it. If money talks, why is it that you think that nobody's taking the time to listen?
I think it reminds me of an experience I had when I worked in Brazil, where I had moved down to Brazil. I didn't speak Portuguese, and people were constantly talking to me, and I knew they were talking to me. I just couldn't translate what they were saying, and I think that's what happens with money is people know that money is talking. They just don't understand the language to be able to translate what it actually means.
Yeah, and whose job is it to make sure that they understand what it means?
I think that that falls on your accountant or your finance, your CFO, whatever title you want to give them. I think it's that person's job to understand or to be your translator to help, relay the story. And unfortunately, I think, it bad for us in the accounting profession that I would say most accountants and finance professionals, they are not very good translators.
And why do you think that is? What do you think is the crux of that problem?
I do think that, somewhere in those that have gone through the formal training and some portion of the formal training, I do think, there are a lot of accountants who they fell in love with the formal side of it and the deep technical side. So when they come out of school or when it's time to actually work with a non-finance person, there's a bit of friction there. They want to stay technical. And if you don't take a step back to realize that, hey, you know what, I'm not, studying accounting for, hey, my own personal enjoyment. If you are, then I think becoming a college professor or a research professor may be the better route for you. But if you're going to actually practice, I think, a lot of accountants don't really take that time to step down from the deep theoretical to actually focus on the practical and the real world application of it.
Yeah, and let's be honest. These business owners or even individuals dealing with their personal tax returns, guess what? They don't want to become accountants because if they were good with that sort of stuff, they would have become accountants, not hairdressers or tradespeople.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's one of those things where I found myself, falling into that as well, to where, what you do take as an accountant, you do take pride in what you know. And sometimes you want to demonstrate what you know. But the problem is the people you're trying to demonstrate to, they don't care about, how deep your technical knowledge is. What they care about is how do you use what you know to help me in what I'm doing? And sometimes it can be a little bit of an ego hit because you spent years studying your field and getting better at it. If you're a chartered accountant or a CPA in the US, I mean, you went through a very tough process to earn that, to where you want to wear it like a badge of honor. But to people who aren't in the profession, it's tough to say, but it's like they don't really care about that side of it. They want to know, how can I use it to actually, run my business to make more money, or how can I use it to achieve what I care about?
Yeah, and it wasn't it Einstein that says if you can't explain what you do simply enough that a 6 year old can understand it, then you don't understand it well enough yourself yet.
I totally agree. And I would say, and I don't think that that's just a saying, because I've been in situations where, even talking with other accounting and finance professionals in in a business setting, to where they were explaining something, and I was like, okay, all right. There's no way we can break that down to like a 6-year old level. So something doesn't sound right about that. And a lot of times what I found is those that were making it complicated, they didn't really understand it themselves. So I'm just like, why are we wasting time doing this?
Yeah, look, we probably see that a lot in business. What are some of the big mistakes that you've seen made?
I think definitely around cash flow. And funny enough, like I was actually, before, coming to this interview, I was working with a client on some things, and one of the big things we were looking at is cash flow. And they're like, we're working hard, we're selling the products, but we don't understand, why we're running into this need of having to go out and get these, short-term loans and different things. And as I kind of built out the cash flow model, and I said, okay, all right, here's one of those things where I'm not going to take you through the technical side of how I built this. What you need to see is the trend of why your cash is going up and down. And when we started zeroing in into some things, there were some, habits that they had that they were doing. And it's like, that's causing you a cash problem. And it's just like when they saw it, they were like, oh, it makes so much more sense now. Like, I understand it. So I think cash flow is definitely a big one. And then
Okay,
I
and I
also,
love what you and I loved what you said about the modeling. Because I think that there's this perception out there that if you just have this cash flow model, that's going to solve the problem. But it isn't. It's about the insights that you get from the trends and the models and the actions that people take to actually fix the stuff. That's what they value. The model itself is it's not really worth anything.
absolutely. I always take it back to, even before I started my own firm and I was working for a tech company, one of the things that I used to tell the employees on my team is, whatever we do, the question you should be asking yourself is, what is a non-finance person going to actually go physically do once they get this information? And if you can't answer that question based off of your analysis that you've done, then your analysis isn't ready for them yet, because what they don't just need numbers on pages. What they need is they need this information to tell them to go do something, or to give them an indication to go do something. And if you're not at that point yet, then your analysis is a little premature and it's not ready for them yet.
Yeah, yeah. That makes total sense. I love that. I've taken note of that. I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes to make sure that that point gets hammered home. Let's be honest, finance and accounting, they're bloody complex topics, right? It takes years for accountants to master this stuff. What do you recommend for individuals and business owners that are, struggling right now and they're not really sure what to do?
Yeah, what I tell a lot of business owners is, you don't need to become an accountant to understand what you need to know to run your business. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things about accounting that, that's, beyond what you really need to know. Like, for example, there's a lot of business owners like, you don't need to know mark to market accounting or derivative accounting. And, people spend years trying to figure that stuff out and learning that. But what you really do need is you need a framework for what makes sense for your business. And so I always tell, different business owners, if you have an accountant, you should set up a meeting with them and have them explain to you what are the basic numbers that you need to know to drive your business forward. And to be completely honest, if that accountant can't do that for you, I always tell them you're probably working with the wrong person. You need to find someone that cares enough about the business that you're pouring your blood, sweat, and tears in to be able to at least give you that basic framework. And once you start to be able to see that framework, then you'll be able to start seeing how your actions are tied to dollars. And when you start to see that connection, what will happen is you'll start making more informed and more profitable decisions.
Yeah. If you had to make an educated guess, what's your estimate of how often the average business owner actually hears from their accountant?
I would say for most, it is probably once, maybe twice a year. And it's all around taxes. And now 2020 may have been more, but outside of that, I would say maybe once a year when it's time to do their taxes.
And why do you think that's a problem?
I think that's a huge problem because at that point, there's not really much that can be done. And I tell people, even if you are gonna, you just want to, get an update on and talk about your taxes. If you're only having a conversation once a year, that's not enough for your tax attorney or tax accountant to give you the insights that you need to act, because a lot of the tax strategies do take, steady action, and you have to plan ahead of time or you won't meet the proper deadlines, or you won't meet the proper, I guess you say, criteria that you need. And then I also think if you're trying to run a business, I mean, waiting till the end of the year to find out, hey, well, how did I do this year? If you're finding out at the end after it's all said and done, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't go into the past and change it. So I always tell, every one of my clients, as well as other people who aren't my clients, at a very minimum, you want to have at least a conversation every quarter. Now, more ideally is talking every month. And depending on the nature of your business, maybe even having like a weekly touch point to just, update or to discuss different things, depending on what's going on in your business. But I would say at a minimum every quarter, because so much change from quarter to quarter. And you want to make sure that you're factoring that in and that you're getting that, that expert opinion from someone who knows the numbers and that can help educate and walk you through, hey, here's the financial impact you can expect from those.
Hey, what do you think prevents lay people from actually reaching out and just asking for the help? Because, one thing is getting the accountants to put it in the way that they do business to actually touch base with their clients more. But what do you think prevents the average business owner from putting their hand up and saying, "Hey, I need help"?
I do think that the billing process is probably one that's a little that scares people, because I think a similar thing happens even on the legal side, where people feel like, man, if I call my accountant, then they're going to be tracking every single hour. The bill is going to just grow, or I don't want to get a surprise bill. And also I do think that for some people, they have tried doing that, having regular conversations with their accountant, but when they had the conversation, they really didn't get much value out of it. It like they had a conversation and they're like, you know what, I didn't walk away with anything new, or I didn't walk away with any insight that I can actually use to run my business. So they just assume that, hey, you know what, maybe this is a person that's behind the scenes. I only talk to them after it's all said and done.
Hmm. And let's be honest. People also don't like to admit that they don't understand what the accountant just said to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do think that is, that is a, because I would say, as an entrepreneur myself, one of the things that I realize is when you're running a business, there is a lot of ego involved. I mean, from, you're putting yourself out there and you're trying to grow your business. Some things are working out, some things are not, some things are wins, some things are losses. And, your confidence does take hits every now and then. So I think, as a business owner, understanding yourself that, hey, you know what, me, admitting what I don't know, it can be challenging if, like I said, if you've just spent an entire month just taking, hits to your confidence because things that didn't work out. And now to put on top of that, you got to go to your accountant and admit that you don't know something. It can be a bit challenging. And I think that ego side is something that not a lot of business owners prepare themselves for, because it does take ego. I mean, it does take a healthy ego to be able to admit what you don't know and then to actually seek out the help, along with all the other things that, maybe challenging your ego with deals lost or clients leaving, or maybe a bad or review that didn't go so well. But I do think that does play a big role in it as well.
Yeah, look, being a business owner is hard at the best of times. And I think what we've all learned globally is that it's even harder in the worst of times, right? When we're going through a pandemic and some people are not allowed to go to their business, or the way that they do business is now made almost impossible because of the lockdowns and, the things that are happening. We can't hide this cash flow problem anymore. You and I are, accounting professionals. So we've always known that cash flow is critical. It's crucial to someone's success. But I think it's now even more obvious even to laypersons because of all the loans and the special programs and grants that were required to keep people afloat.
Absolutely. And I do think that is and unfortunately, I think cash flow is something that I don't think accountants have done a good job in the past of really stepping up to help, non-finance professionals understand the weight of cash flow. Because I'll be honest, even in my experiences of working with Fortune 500 companies, I would say, when I talk to other accountants, maybe I would say, you know 3 out of 10 had a grasp on the cash flow impact of the business. Most accountants really spend most of their time either on the income statement or the balance sheet. And so when that's what, a lot of people talk about, your bottom line and your P&L, or they talk about, depending on the nature of your business, they may talk about the balance sheet. But when you don't hear many people talk about cash flow, it just is some of those things that it's no surprise to me that business owners don't grasp it already, because even when I talk to accountants, a lot of them don't really grasp it either.
Forgive me because I can't remember where I saw this. I'm going to hunt it down after we're done recording so I can include it in the show notes. But there was a study that came out of America during the heat of the pandemic. And what they did, it was a reputable study. What they did is they measured the amount of days of runway that people had on average in America in terms of cash flow. The average, so half of the businesses had less than 16 days of runway in cash flow and reserves, and 90% was under like 28 days or something like it was. They were crazy numbers. Think about that.
Yeah.
If they couldn't trade for 16 to 28 days, 90% of the businesses were at risk of going under.
Wow.
That's,
Yeah.
that's horrific.
That is, I mean, and unfortunately, it's not surprising, because I think most people aren't really thinking about it. Because I think even if you take a step back from the business owner per view of it, and you look at the way people manage their own financial lives, to where it's like you see the same thing where it's like people don't have enough cash flow to really float their everyday life. So then when those same people start a business, and they take some of that same financial mindset into running the business, well, as long as I have enough to do what I need to do today, and they're not thinking, like I said, and that's one of the areas where I help a lot of clients, is just let's create a model and let's look out a couple months to see, okay, all right, you might be doing well today, but hey, let's think about what could happen or what might happen, and let's see how well you're going to look a couple months from now. Because the best time to take decisions to impact a couple of months from now is actually this month.
Yeah, right now, today, maybe even yesterday was better. Right? Yesterday was the best day, and today is the second best. One of the
Absolutely.
things that I see a lot too is that I call it stinking thinking. People have chronic poverty mindset. And the business is just a reflection of who they are as people. If the person themselves is making stupid, crazy comments like, I don't want to pay tax. Really? Are you serious? What you're telling me is you don't want to be successful. Am I hearing you correctly? If people are making statements like that, like, I'm not good with numbers, or they have scarcity mindset, how in the hell are they going to run a successful business?
The problem is, the truth is they're not. I mean, when you're thinking like that, you're not going to run a successful business.
Yeah, don't hold back, Terrell. Tell me how it really is.
And so so on the topic of taxes, like I said, I don't usually focus primarily on taxes, but one of the conversations that I have with a lot of people is they say, well, I don't want to pay taxes. And I tell them, well, the simple answer to that is shut your business down, don't make any money. And it's like, because let's be honest, whatever tax you're going to pay now is going to be a percentage of your income. So, if you really want to just not pay taxes, don't make any income. But it's like, if we're growing your income significantly faster, then what, would you mind paying more taxes because you're actually making more money? And I think for people, they struggle to grasp that.
Hell yes. That's my answer, Carol. Hell yeah.
And I always tell people, I've done a couple webinars for, different groups. And one of the things that I tell them is it's like, tax is this huge, huge topic. And people are like, well, how do I maximize my taxes, or how do I get all these tax breaks? And I tell them, you didn't start a business because you wanted to pay less taxes. You started a business because you wanted to make more money. And what ends up happening is some people get so focused on trying to pay so little in taxes that they're not even focused on running and growing their business. And I tell a lot of people is that, the truth is, until your business actually, unless your business is growing and you're actually making money in your business and making a decent amount of money, there really aren't too many tax strategies that you can use. I mean, what you really need to focus on is less on, hey, how do I pay a little taxes? You need to focus on actually growing your business and actually making smart decisions. And as you grow your business, the options for, tax strategies become more plentiful for you because you have a bigger business, you have a actual growing and prospering business. And I tell people all the time, I mean, and I think this is true for just about everywhere, you pay taxes, is that the tax code is designed to stimulate the economy. And if you are growing your business and you're doing things that are stimulating the economy, you will have more tax strategy options than a person who has a small business and they're trying to hold on to this little piece of a business that they have by not focusing on growing it because they're so carried away and scared about paying taxes. I'm like, don't let your fear of taxes stop you from actually growing your business, because you got in business to grow a profitable business. So that's what you need to focus on.
Amen. Today, listeners, folks, we are listening at the Church of Terrell, talking about money. This is absolutely correct. And I'm so glad that you shared it, because I think that we often lose sight of that, right? What sort of strategies and techniques have you found to be most effective in getting folks to understand the fundamentals of money and cash flow?
Yeah, I think one of the big things on the fundamental side, I think, is I did this thing with someone where I explained the income statement, kind of like, broken it down into three sections and really explained it like, your first section is going to be like your revenue, your cost. So I mean, think of it like a movie. Like those are going to be like your main characters in the movie, and your operating expenses will be like your supporting cast, and then all the taxes and everything else are your critics and your investors that support you being able to make this great movie. And what I tell people is, when you're trying to make a movie, it's like, would you design the movie to be all based around, focusing on the supporting cast, or would you focus on the main characters? And as people start to, conceptualize and see the income statement kind of like a movie, and it's just like, hey, here are my main characters. What am I doing to actually grow and improve the main characters of my financial story? They start to get, the framework, and they start to understand how their actions relate to that. Like, for example, one of my clients is a restaurant, and one of the things that we did is, I presented his financial numbers to him, and then I actually we met for maybe about an hour, and I actually walked him through, hey, here's where things are. But if you did these three things, here's how it would look for your business. And when he started to see how the results would change by doing those actions, then he started coming to me. He was like, okay, I'm thinking about doing this action, Terrell. Like, what would that look like? And then that's where we started to be able to look, future focus. And he really started really being able to think through, hey, these actions drive these type of results, to where now when he and I talk, even during, COVID, to where, his restaurant has still been profitable, and we're actually looking to open a second location. And he knows now for this, some of the locations we've been looking at, he goes into the discussion knowing, okay, all right, for this area, I need to have an average of 8 customers a day spending $23.15 per, per customer. And if I can do that, that means I can break even. So anything above that, I know is profit. So now when he goes into those discussions, he knows, okay, all right, well, this area allowed me to get at least 8 customers a day. And then he can kind of back into high level math. And I think, being able to walk him through the numbers and show him the possibility, now he's able to think, with the numbers in mind as he's making different decisions.
Yeah, the best time to be asking about this stuff is before you've taken the action, right? So when you're a small
Absolutely.
business owner, you're not sure, you need to ask better questions so that you can make better decisions and get better results.
Absolutely. And I tell anyone, if you're working with an accountant or or a finance professional, I always tell them is, you know, when you talk to them, tell them, hey, these are the actions that I'm looking to take. How will that impact my results? And if that person cannot answer that question for you, then you're probably not working with the person who's right for where your business is today. They may have been perfect for where your business was yesterday and what you did a year ago, but what you really need is someone who's going to be able to help you translate your actions into dollars and cents. So you know how to connect the two together. And as you're really working through your business on a daily basis, you can think in terms of, okay, all right, I know that if I do this action, it's likely going to lead to this financial impact. So you can start making better informed decisions.
Yeah, look, this makes tons of sense. And look, you and I could probably talk for hours about this stuff. It's been invaluable to the listeners. I believe we got some real gold today. Before we end this session, I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to put your contact details in the show notes, but I just thought maybe you could just let everybody know how they can get in contact with you quickly.
The best place is probably on LinkedIn. It's Terrell A. Turner, CPA. Pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can definitely reach out there, or you can reach my team at the Business Talk Library on our contact page. It's, businesstalklibrary.com contact page there. You can definitely get in touch with us.
Yeah, and I promise I'll put all the details in the show notes. I'll make it nice and easy for everyone. Thank you so much. This was fantastic, and I look forward to perhaps having you back on the show again. I think you really added tons of value, and I enjoyed speaking to you immensely. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure.